This is the brand new Sony A7C, which really surprised me. It's an interesting camera because it's basically like a rebranded or repackaged Sony A7 III with some additions, flip LCD screen, and smaller, and it's cheaper? If you didn't see yesterday's video, I highly recommend you check that out. I basically spent the whole day shooting with this setup right here, getting footage and seeing what the Sony A7C is like. And first off, I gotta say, I am a fan of this body. I think it's one of the nicest, if not the nicest, Sony camera they've ever made, or at least in the last while. And it's nicer than most Canons, I would say, for sure. And it's definitely small. It's a small camera here. Hold on a second. This right here is the Canon EOS R, and this is the Sony A7C. You can see there's quite a bit of difference there in between the two camera bodies. And these are basically comparables between Sony and Canon right now. They're in the exact same price range. So the Sony A7C is small, but it also doesn't really feel too small to me. The grip still feels pretty good. It basically has all the buttons and the layout that I would want, except for one thing, and that is a front dial. There's no dial right here. And I typically like to have the f-stop, the shutter speed, and the ISO all on different dials. But here we only basically have two. We have this back one right here, and then we have this wheel, which I usually make the ISO because I don't use that as often. But here we don't have this front dial. That's probably the only thing I'm missing on the body, but we do have a flip LCD screen, which is incredible. I'm so glad Sony is starting to put in full flip LCD screens on their cameras. Every camera, yes please, every single time for me. Now, if you did want to rig this camera up and use it in a more professional way, I think that's where you'd maybe start feeling like this camera's pretty small and you need some sort of cage or something like that. But I think if you're buying this camera to rig it out, you're probably buying the wrong camera. I don't think that this is really meant for that. There's probably better options for that out there. The image quality, it looks really good to me. It looks exactly like the Sony A7 III, which I really didn't have too many issues with in terms of image quality. The dynamic range is super nice. No, it doesn't look as good as the Sony A7S III, of course not. And no, it doesn't look as good as the Canon R5 that I'm shooting on right now. But it's still really great. It's nice to have 4K. It's nice to have 120 frames per second in 1080, but it still looks good. The IBIS, the stabilization is kind of in that sweet spot where it's not too much, so you're not getting the wobbles here, but it's still cutting out all of that small vibration, that small movement, so that's really nice. Low light capabilities, incredible. It works really well in low light. I mean, I did only really test it and I got dark hallway with Kai, but just like the A7 III, no issues there. And then thanks to Caleb Pike from DSLR Video Shooter for this one, I filmed everything in S-Log 2. I think that's really the sweet spot with the APEC codec. It was the same on the A7 III. But I didn't know about the color mode ITU 709 matrix. So usually I would use one of the Cine Gamuts, but actually the ITU 709 matrix is really nice for colors. It just adds a little bit more saturation, a little bit more life, I would say, to the footage right away. And so when you start color grading, it doesn't start falling apart before you get it to like a good place, which sometimes happens with log footage when the codec isn't super strong. So yeah, I think the colors look pretty great, except for one thing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And better yet, this incredible footage works inside of a MacBook Pro, of a normal laptop or normal editing machine really well. No issues at all. Like butter, super easy, really fast, no issues, no headaches, no shutting down of the computer. This R5 literally just shuts off my whole computer. Not even like crashes Premiere, just shuts off the computer, I'd say at least 3 times per video. That's a little frustrating. And did I mention I'm still filming in 1080 on the R5 because the 4K is just too much for the computers right now. And I'm honestly super confused. I kept seeing people saying like, the Sony A7C is not worth it. It's way too expensive. I can't believe they priced it so high. And I'm honestly confused by that. It's the exact same price as the Canon EOS R, and I didn't really hear too much about this being way too expensive. It has more specs than the EOS R. It's a smaller body. I actually don't understand it. It's cheaper than the Sony A7 III, which nobody complained about that it was too expensive. I don't get that one actually. And if this would have come out at the same time as the EOS R, I would probably be a Sony shooter right now. I think I would have chosen this over the EOS R if they're the same price, more specs on the Sony, the dynamic range, flip LCD screen, the autofocus is really great. Did I mention that I think the autofocus is improved? I haven't had really any issues with the autofocus on this guy, so that's really nice. Also, if I didn't mention, this Sony electronic microphone is like the perfect pair for this camera. Keeps the body really small. This lens is still a little too big. They need a smaller, like super wide lens. That would be so nice to have this little like tiny compact little vlogging machine. So smart of Sony to make this little microphone that talks directly to the camera, no cables, just very, very smart. Now let's talk about the downers. The menu. The menu is the same A7 III menu, and I got kind of used to the Sony A7S III menu, which I think is a lot better. I wish this had that menu. Small little thing, but I wish it did. And I did notice like quite a bit of a magenta shift, especially in skin tones. At least coming from the R5 and the A7S III, there's a noticeable shift. And interestingly, I recently taught you guys how to keep the same colors in Premiere as on the export. Usually they're like completely different. But this time when I exported it, there was a much more of a difference on the Sony footage than there was on the intro of the R5 footage. There was a magenta shift, the saturation looked different, it just didn't look the same. So I actually had to re-export, do some tweaks, and then re-export it because it just didn't look that good. And I noticed in some other people's videos when the Sony A7C was released that the skin tones on some people's videos are just like really bad, like terrible looking. So I don't know if that's just like a same old issues of 8-bit codecs and all that stuff, or that's something new. And the last little downer or thing that I noticed was that this goes to a minimum of ISO 500, and I was having a hard time using my same old 2 to 5 stop ND filter. I was running out of ND. I would have needed more ND. I had to actually ramp up the shutter a few times outside, and I never have that on my Canons. They go to ISO 400, but I actually think that they're like ISO ratings aren't like universal across the board. So I think that this is actually exposing quite a bit higher. I didn't get a chance to really test it with the R5 here, but I feel, you know what? Let's test it right now. We're gonna go same settings. Yeah, at least on the LCD, it definitely looks like the Sony is exposing like quite a bit higher still, even though we're on the exact same settings, 50 shutter speed, f2.8, ISO 500. So that's just something to keep in mind. That can be a little bit of a headache sometimes when you're outside. But overall, I can gauge how good a camera is for me by how many times I'm just like annoyed at the camera using it for the first time. I don't remember a single moment where I was just like, oh, why is this camera doing this? Or why isn't it working? Or this is really weird. It was just like so fun to use. I would say this is a huge success. The Sony A7C is a really great camera, great image for a good price in a small body. And yeah, it's clearly meant for you know, the YouTubers, the vloggers, the people that want to travel and make some videos. But I could also see people using this as a wedding film shooter or a little dock camera, little corporate videos. No problems at all, like no issues at all with this camera. With 4K, great dynamic range, flip LCD screen, IBIS, basically everything you could want, slow motion. This might be the camera that most people should be getting, because let's face it, the Sony A7S III is very expensive, really expensive, not to mention all the memory cards and all that stuff that you gotta get. This is the camera I think that most people, when you're starting out or like getting a little bit higher into videography, or if you're doing vlogging or YouTube, this would be a camera that I could really recommend to people. And now it's time to deal with something that's been stressing me out a little bit because I feel bad. These have been at the office for a little while now, so. Hi Matti, it is nowadays pretty rare to use handwriting. However, for me, it has always been a form of presenting gratitude, respect. Please accept this small gift from me. Oh, that's actually cool. That's like my logo right there. Very much appreciate it. I don't know how to say your name, but thank you. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna test this out. I don't have time right now, though. I feel like I don't have time for anything. I have 2 kids, family, YouTube channel. This is... I don't think I'm allowed to show these yet. Hope all is well. Couldn't think of any other way to start this letter other than simply thank you for being an influence in the start of my journey as a YouTuber. You're welcome. Thanks, Kip Jackson. Thanks for the stickers, but more so, thanks for the really kind words. I appreciate it. It's a t-shirt and some hats. Luminar. Best from sunny Toronto, Evie and Luminar team. Thanks, guys. Hello, Matti. My name is Kabir. I have just started my journey as a filmmaker and content creator. A few months later, We The Project launched and I signed up right away. I just got an email from We The Project. Team wants to feature me as a creative of... Congrats, man. That's awesome. I love hearing that kind of stuff. This is great. I have no idea if I'm allowed to talk about this. If I'm not allowed to talk about this, I'm just blurring everything, but... And lastly, this monstrosity... This thing is gigantor. Oh, it's the new big light from Aperture, their panel. Oh my gosh, this thing is huge. This is amazing. Oh, wow. You forget how much like legit cinematography, like you're on a big set lights. Wait, this thing is beastly. If you guys didn't know, it's the Nova P300C. This is like an RGB panel light, super bright. Oh my gosh. This thing is incredible. Wow. This is like really bright. This is the most beastly light I have ever owned in my life. Thank you, Aperture, for sending this. I feel like I gotta use this on like the short film or something, because this thing is... that is crazy bright. Oh my gosh. This is next level. Aperture, you guys have graduated from like a good, but like kind of like a more budget-friendly lighting company to cinema. Also, these just got launched today. They're calling it the A7C, which is just a regular light bulb. They're making no, I'm just kidding. This is like kind of like a movie magic light bulb. So this can be just plugged into like any normal, you know, like a lamp thing, practical, whatever. But it's actually an LED light. Like so. It has a battery built in, so the light doesn't even need to be plugged in. You can just have a practical in the background, and you don't need to have an electrical plug or anything like that, which is really great. And then how you charge it is you just plug it into a light bulb. That's how you charge it. And best of all, this thing can be controlled via app. So I can make it bright. Wow, that's actually quite bright. So I can control the brightness, the color, and you can even choose a color. So let's say you want it to be like my skin tone color. I don't know why you would want that, but you want it to be my skin tone color. Any color you want. You know, you got this Aperture red here. We want it to be that color. Boom, just like that. It's just, technology is incredible. If you guys knew what you had to do to achieve, for example, this kind of red color back in the day, you would literally need gels. You'd have to cut up little gels of different colors, mix and match, and then get these colors. Now I just take my app out and I can control all my lights. So smart, Aperture, so smart. So yeah, I think these are out now. Highly recommend these for like movie practicals. Really cool. I just got one more package. Oh, it's the Sony A7S III. Yeah!